What's up, everybody? I'm Caleb Ochoa, also known as NFL Caleb 22, and this is Betting the NFL. And as always, I do have my co-host with me, Derek Weatherly, also known as DWeezy. What's going on, man?
Man, it's another day here looking through these NFL lines. We're cooking in the kitchens, we're cooking outside, and now we're here to cook the sports books. So, you know, we're going to break things down, get into these futures. The beauty of futures and a lot of these preseason numbers, whether it be player props or, total wins, because often there are times throughout the regular season we will see these markets pop back up, but you will be talking about radically different odds, radically different numbers in some case. So with a lot of these markets, definitely preseason, you're seeing a lot of plus numbers out there. And if you can find a good angle, you can press it for a nice potential windfall, depending on what that number looks like.
We just got through the first week of preseason. All teams have played. I just finished watching my Cowboys play. So very excited, getting ready for the season. But there is still time to get your bets in before the season for all your futures bets, and we're going to go over some of those today as we go through the NFC West division and whether we think that of their odds of winning the division, the over under win totals, and will they make the playoffs on each of these teams. But before we do that, we got to say what's up to Adelia. How's it going? Um, but yeah, well, we'll get right into it and start with the team with the best odds to win the NFC West, and that is the San Francisco 49ers. They're at minus 190. You can get that FanDuel. Over under win total is set at 11 and a half wins. And yeah. Um, but going back to last season in 2023, 49ers did go 12 and 5, first in the NFC West. And they win the division, they go to the playoffs, and obviously get all the way to the Super Bowl, where they, of course, lose in overtime to old Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. But, with a healthy Brock Purdy, they were able to be successful for most of the season, all the way up until that final game. Um, and they won a lot of games doing that. But in the off season, they did add some pieces. Linebacker Leonard Floyd, defensive and Gross Matos, defensive tackle Jordan Elliott, center John Feliciano. But they did lose some pieces as well. Defensive end Arik Armstead, defensive end Chase Young, defensive tackle Javon Kinlaw, and really unsure if Brandon Ayuk is gonna be there or not. So we're still waiting on to hear on any news that where if
Yeah,
he's going to stay
that's
with them
a
or not.
then that's a player that can genuinely move a number, not only for the 49ers. I wouldn't say, it necessarily bring it down that drastically. You may see that have more movement in the player prop markets. Be more opportunities potentially being available for the other offensive threats still in San Francisco. But you're also talking about IU being a potential needle mover for some of these teams out there. At this point, we've heard a number of teams thrown out when it comes to the Ayuk series. Uh, it seems that Cleveland's been shot down. There's, been rumors off and on for what seems months now about the potential of Pittsburgh. Um, but it does seem like Ayuk is dead set on making his way out of San Fran this season. So, it may not be something that potentially costs the 49ers games in the long run. But as I said, if you're, I hadn't heard of a team like Washington, but if you're talking about a team with, a legitimate hole or, a team that's sitting around this, 5, 6, 7 total wins on the season, Ayuk is definitely enough of a playmaker where he could be the difference between a loss or victory in a handful of games throughout this season.
Yeah, and definitely keep an eye on that. That can definitely change some things for their over and under win total, especially. Um, so you have to look at that. But as far as their chances to win the division, I still think they're the favorite. I mean, they're the favorite for the reason they have a minus number. Um, the sports books are giving them. So I feel as though yeah, they're definitely likely to win this division. Once again, they still have a lot of talent there, even without whether Brandy is there or not. So a lot of talent on that offense and defense as well. But I think they did lose some guys on defense, which might bring it down just a little bit. Might be not as good as they were last year, and they're definitely not going to be as good as last year if they don't have Ayuk with them. Which even though I think they probably will win the division, I still probably like the under 11 and a half at minus 105 and get that bet MGM. So I'm gonna go under. I'm gonna hit them right there at 11 wins. Um, Under that 11 and a half. And of course, I still, if they're going to win, I still think they can win the division even with those 11 wins. Um, and that will obviously make them a yes for the playoffs, which is at minus 420 at FanDuel. So I put more money on those, but I'm probably not going to put money on that minus number to win the division, even though I think it's likely. Um, I think some other teams could have a chance at it, but yeah, definitely like the under. But I still do think they'll make the playoffs.
Something that comes to mind, given that you like the under on this 11 and a half. There aren't too many teams out there that you would maybe ponder this conversation about. But let's say we get into the season, the 49ers. It's not hard to imagine that the first half of the season, let's say they go 6-2, 7-1. Hell, they can go potentially 8-0. But either way, you're talking about only a couple losses throughout the first half of the season, maybe. You might you might be able to find a plus number on an under, depending on when you can catch it. Just simply because you know with some of these win totals, it takes a lot to move the number, and especially if you're talking about being in season. So if you were able to find that number at 11 and a half at some point in season, and we're talking about the 49ers having only one or two losses on their record, you're either talking about a scenario where you're looking at under 12 and a half wins, or you're getting a plus number at 11 and a half. And if you like the under at 11 and a half, I would imagine you'd be comfortable with a minus 105, minus 110 in that 12 and a half range. But as I said, there's not too many teams in the league where you might consider this. Maybe the Chiefs would be another one where you would look at them in this fashion. But I think in most cases, we're out here looking for the teams that are going to have a breakout. Who's sitting with a low win total that can steal a couple games and clear that number. So it's kind of the reverse mindset behind something like that. Because I do think, as you said, whether Ayuk is there throughout the entire season or not, where this has to be the most loaded offensive lineup in the NFL. Between Kittle, McCaffrey, Debo's still there. There's a lot of hype behind the wide receiver Parrish, who is currently banged up, so we might not get an opportunity to see him much throughout the preseason. But that was somebody that when he was drafted, a lot of people wondered, was this another signal that we see Ayuk move because he could potentially step in at that same role that we've seen Shanahan and that system use a player like Ayuk. Now, when it comes to this team, as far as any sort of deep playoff run, at a certain point, we got to start asking ourselves, is Kyle Shanahan going to ever be the bride, or will he always be the bridesmaid? As he seems to be rather successful of getting to that doorstep, but hasn't found a way to get the door open, whether it be against, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes.
I mean, that's just the thing. It's because the other team has a better quarterback. I mean, that's probably
Also,
simply put it. That's probably the main reason.
But you also have to look at some of the makeups of the team. Was Jimmy Garoppolo any different than Brock Purdy when he was in San Francisco? If it wasn't for the injuries, are we talking about Jimmy Garoppolo being anywhere else but San Francisco? And that's not necessarily a knock on him, even though he's, become what seems to be a career backup at this point. But that's been the question, surrounding San Fran for quite some time now. How capable is Brock Purdy? You have a lot of, they've clearly done everything possible to put weapons around the quarterback position. Now, you know, is it theoretically possible for seventh round, late round, somebody at any position to have success? Yes, clearly Brock Purdy's done it. Unlike a lot of situations, he didn't come into a scenario where you got everybody fighting for a roster spot. You're talking about this lineup being pretty much set in stone. A franchise bookend tackle to guard your blind side. One of the best running backs, at least in this decade. Top-notch receivers, tight ends. I mean, you couldn't ask for more. And so I think the question is still going to persist. Can they get over that hump? Because clearly everybody believes that this team can get to the playoffs. They're, strong favorite to win the division. I wouldn't necessarily put any money on the game totals or the total wins. I don't know. It's just, like I said, with this team, Ayuk potentially being gone, there's still questions surrounding what's going to happen with Armstead or with their left tackle who's holding out. So it's just, I hate to say that, there's a lot of questions around this team, but there's a lot of things that I see that makes me not want to put my money on this team, even though by all accounts, it seems to be, we're talking about one of the best teams in the league.
Yeah, that's it. Definitely in the NFC at least. But yeah, I still, like you said, there's too many. I think they're not as good. That's all, at least I think they'll won't be as good as they were last season. That's why I don't unsure about them, even though, like I said, they still have a lot of talent, and you can't not factor that in to when you're putting your money down. But we'll move on. We'll move on to the team with the second best odds, and that is the Los Angeles Rams. They're at plus 350 to win the division, and you find that at ESPN. Your over under win total is set at 8.5 wins. In 2023, they were 10-7, second in NFC West. They had a rough start to the season. They were like 3-6 through 9 games. Then they finished off very strong, 7-1, making the playoffs. With the emergence of standout rookie Puka Nacua, but they did lose in the wild card, and they lost to the Lions by a point. In the offseason, they added some pieces in guard Jonah Jackson, tight end Colby Parkinson, cornerback Darius Williams, safety Cameron Curl, and cornerback Trey White. But they did lose Carson Wentz. They didn't lose too much. Carson Wentz, Jordan Fuller, safety guard Coleman Shelton. They did draft a whole bunch of players at top.
Finally
players.
Cashing in on some of them draft picks that, for how many years was it, F them draft picks?
Yeah, a lot of guys in the top 100. In round 1, they take edge to Jared Verse out of Florida State. Round 2, they take defensive lineman Brandon Fisk out of Florida State. Round 3, they take Blake Corum out of Michigan. And another round 3 pick, they take Cameron Kitchens out of Miami. I think with those a lot of young guys coming in, they already had some pretty good draft picks already starting birds, like we just said. Puka Nacua, one of them. And now these young guys coming in, I think they'll just improve them even more. I think they just keep building on what they did last year and adding to the talent what they just got. They did get a big loss in losing Aaron Donald, but with what they did in the draft, I think they could fill in some of those missing pieces there.
One thing worth pointing out with the Aaron Donald retirement, he made he didn't make it an issue, but it was publicly known for the past couple of years that retirement was something he was heavily considering. Not to say that he got tired of the game, but at a certain point, I think even he admitted it to some degree. there wasn't much left for the man to accomplish. I mean, he had a ring. He's, all pro this, Pro Bowl that, you know, clearly, I mean, even last year, still one of the most, if not the most dominant defensive linemen in the game. How many times have we seen, clips where you got 3 and 4 guys trying to block Aaron Donald and it's still, a 4-man rush coming? Like, so I do think, while, there's no replacing an Aaron Donald,
Yeah.
the Rams have, they had the opportunity to position themselves to address this hole.
Yeah, and I think they did. I think they did address it in the offseason. And you know what? They still have McVay. They still have Stafford, which gives them a shot at winning this division. And at plus 350, I mean, you can get a big profit. Even you don't have to spend that much to make some money. And I think they have a chance. Like, I mean, I don't think the 49ers are run away with the division. I think it'll still be a fight, and if they got at least a chance, I'm willing to take that chance and put some money on them to win the division, especially at plus 350. I think that's good profit there. And I'll take them on the over 8.5. I think 8.5 is pretty low, especially when they won 10 games last year and you got them at 8.5. I don't see how they're worse this season than they were last season. Yeah, I know they lost Aaron Donald, but defensive players don't move the needle like that. I know he's like one of the best defensive players ever. I get that, but just in context of betting, it doesn't move it like a game and a half down on your win totals. So I'm definitely going to take the over on that one. And yeah, and I think they will make the playoffs. I think that especially in the NFC that's not as strong as an AFC. I think they have a good chance to make the playoffs, and I'm going to bet it at plus 100.
Yeah, I definitely like this team to make the playoffs, especially if you can find that plus number, depending on what the books are pricing it at wherever you're located. Well, in my opinion, we're talking about one of the few coaches in the NFL that actually coaches and elevates his players. Now, that it's an uncommon thing, but it's not necessarily a knock on all coaches. It's pretty much how it is. Not to say necessarily Sean McVay is an innovator or doing something that other people can't figure out, but he's able to think outside the box enough where it doesn't matter who's on the other side of the ball. We've seen in times whether that with that offense being beat up or people missing time, and things pretty much moved and went without skipping a gear. I think the running back draft pick out of Michigan, that might be an interesting person to keep your eye on, potentially from some fantasy aspects. Just taking a look at the history of what McVay's been able to do with running backs that seem to not be able to produce the same success in other locations. So I definitely believe that you're getting some plus value there just simply off the head coach. If Stafford's able to stay healthy, I know we haven't been able to see Cooper Kupp stay healthy for the past couple seasons, but if we're talking about a scenario where you got Kupp on one side of the ball, you got Nakua on the other side, the potential motions and pre-snap movements and everything that the Rams offense is going to do, you're talking about a highly deadly weapon.
And honestly, I think they just did it again. I think they just drafted a low round pick in Jordan Whittington, who looked great today. I think they got another standout receiver to go along with those guys.
Well, they're definitely going to find themselves in a position where the defense is more worried about the other receivers on the field. That's for damn sure. Because it's hard to make an argument that there's a better wide receiver duo out there right now. Yes, we've only seen 1 year out of Puka, but what we saw was definitely something I think we see more of this season. And if you're talking about Kupp being on the field at the same time, yes, you might see the targets go down, but the man was electric and able to find himself in open space. And when he got into open space, he was able to make defenders miss. So from an offensive standpoint, yes, there might be some drop off with the defense, but Sean McVay showed in the past that if you get in a shootout with them, I think you get more confident betting on McVay to come out on top in that shootout.
All right. Before we move on to the next team, uh, if you guys can hit the like button, um, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. You can join our Patreon if you really want to support us. The link is in the description down below. Join whatever tier that suits you. We would very much appreciate it if you can do all that. But we just thank you here and appreciate that y'all are tuning in for this and watching it. Thank you all for that. All right, we'll move on to the team. The NFC West has the third best odds to win it, and that is the Seattle Seahawks at plus 800. You find that number at Caesars Sportsbook. And the over-under is set at 7.5. Yeah, so in 2023, they went 9-8, third in the NFC West, did not make the playoffs. They started strong, they were 5-2, but had some major injuries to Geno Smith, Kenneth Walker, DK Metcalf, and Witherspoon as well, which led to pretty much their downfall the rest of the season. And being that three-way tie at the end of the season, not being able to get in that last wild card spot. But that all led to Pete Carroll, leaving the team, and then them hiring head coach Mike Macdonald going into the 2024 season. They did add Rashawn Jenkins, safety, right tackle George Fant, linebacker Jerome Baker, defensive tackle Jonathan Hankins, and guard Connor Williams. But they did lose guard Damian Lewis, linebacker Jordan Brooks, tight end Colvin Parkinson, tight end Will Dissly, running back DJ Dallas, quarterback Drew Lock, and linebacker Bobby Wagner. They did draft in round 1 defensive lineman Byron Murphy out of Texas. In round 3, they take Christian Haynes out of UConn. In round 4, they take tight end Adrian Barner. I think with new head coach, there's going to be some struggle at the start of the season. But I think it's good for them. I think it's good for them. Pete Carroll was there for a long time. And, they went, obviously had some really great success. But, I think it was time to make a switch up for this team. I think a new coach is actually good for the Seahawks, especially. And I think Geno is good enough to win some games here. But, he's not good enough to win this division. So I'm not going to put any money on that number. But I do like him on the over. I do like him on the over 7.5. I think 7.5 is really low for the Seahawks. I mean, they won 9. I think they can at least get to 8. So I'll take the minus 135. And they're at plus 250 at 215 at yes to make the playoffs at Bally Bet. I mean, it's the NFC conference. I mean, I think they can make it. I think they can make it at plus 215. You're gonna make a profit. That's at Bally Bet. So I'm gonna take them. I'm gonna say yes to making the playoffs for the Seahawks.
There's one I'm gonna have to go the other way with you. I just have too many questions about what the offense is going to be able to do. As you said, first year head coach coming in with McDaniels. We saw what he could do as a defensive coordinator. So on the defensive side of the ball, I'm highly interested to see what we get there. There is some potential for McDaniels to
McDonald.
McDonald.
Yeah.
To not have, necessarily a Midas touch, but we were seeing, from what he did in Baltimore, we saw good things, and now it's his time to shine. But in the NFL that we have today, if you can't produce on the offensive side of the ball, it doesn't matter if you have the best defense in the league. You're not going to be able to get wins. And, with the surrounding pieces with Geno there at the quarterback position, I'm not sure offensively they have enough in place.
Man, they still got the receivers. They still got the running back. I mean, they still got some good weapons there.
Well, in as far as the running backs, unproven. Because in my opinion, at least with me,
You think
Walker.
Kenneth Walker's unproven? I think he proved that
Well,
he's a
but
hell of a running
that's
back.
more an issue. How healthy is he going to stay?
That's true. I mean, that's totally fair. But that you can say that about any running back.
I know, but in this instance, we're talking about him coming off injury and things like that. You know, as far as unproven, that was more referencing. I believe his name's Charbonnet. I'm not quite sure how to
Yeah.
say that. But you're talking about an aging Tyler Lockett. I'd have to look at the numbers, but I feel like we've seen a decrease out of DJ Metcalf over the past couple of years. So yeah, just with the coaching staff that's in place and with the offensive pieces that are there and a quarterback that's not necessarily going to elevate the players around him, I'm gonna be going with the under 7.5. And I definitely, that said, they're definitely not making the playoffs.
Okay. Well, we got some difference there.
I know that just makes me feel better just knowing that at least one of us is on the other side.
Yeah, that's good. Good to know. Like I said, you can go either with Derek or you can go with me, whoever you think made the better argument. Um, and whatever is going to make you money, that is our goal here. All right, we'll move on to the last team of this division with the worst odds to win it, and that is the Arizona Cardinals at plus 1,300. You get, you know, you can get that number at any various sports books. Or over under win total is set at 6.5. Last season and 2023, they went 4-13, fourth in the NFC West, did not make the playoffs. Obviously, without their starting quarterback going into that season, they knew they were going to win very many games. I mean, that was kind of just set for them. But Kyler Murray did eventually come back. Obviously, it's going to take a while to bring him back after injury. It always does. So yeah, even after that, they weren't going to be very good, and that's how they end up being 4-13. But in the offseason, they did add Justin Jones, he's a tackle, right tackle Jonah Williams, cornerback Sean Bunting, defensive end Balone Nichols, and receiver Zay Jones. They did lose Marquise Brown and defensive tackle like Kai Afotu. They did draft in round one Marvin Harrison Jr., receiver out of Ohio State, and then took another round one pick, edge Darius Robinson out of Missouri, and they take in round two Max Melton out of Rutgers and running back Trey Benson out of Florida State. Round three, they take Rip Ryman out of Illinois, tight end, and cornerback Elijah Jones, cornerback out of Boston College in round three. So they got a lot of top draft picks. Again, just like the Rams, a lot of top 100 picks that came in with an influx of young, talented guys. I think, honestly, this could be similar situation to what the Packers had. They had a lot of young guys last year. We didn't really know what they were going to be, and they hit on a lot of their picks right there. And that could happen with this team. They still, if Kyle Murray's back and healthy and back to the way he was, I could provide a spark for them with young, talented guys that they have. I'm not gonna put any money them to win this division, but at 6.5, I kind of like the over. I think they can get to 7. You can get that number -150. Oh no, for the over, yeah, -150 for the over at DraftKings. But if you really, really like them, I saw it +125 for over 7.5 at that MGM.
Now
So if you
that
really like
is a
them,
nice number right there.
you can also take that and get yourself a nice profit. I'm going to say no to playoffs. I think they just missed it on it, but I think they're competitive. I think they'll be a competitive team, a young competitive team, because they got some nice pieces and a lot of talent on that team. So we just unproven talent, but we'll see what happens. But I do like them on the over 6.5.
Yeah, I definitely like this over 6.5. I think we're talking about one of the most exciting non-quarterback players to come out of this previous draft with Marvin Harrison Jr. There's been a lot of talk about him for the past couple of seasons, and now it's that time to shine. And if Kyler Murray can return to the form that we've seen in the past, yes, there were some downfalls, but there was still a lot of notes that led you to be excited for the potential of what could come with the right pieces surrounding it. And I think, as you with a lot of draft picks, like you said, that opportunity could exist more now than it has in the past. The coaching staff definitely shocked people. I don't think too many people were high on them coming into last season, especially with not having Kyler Murray for the majority of the season and knowing that before ever playing a game. Um, definitely showed to some of the resilience of this coaching staff and what they were able to do with the players that they had available. Um, so yeah, uh, definitely like the over 6.5, and where I'm looking currently. Well, now they have, at this place, they have it at over 8.5, at plus 240. But yeah, definitely some, the potential for playing an alternate win total over with the Arizona Cardinals, talking about a plus number, whether it be, 7, whether it be 7.5, so, plus 150 or wherever you find it at, or even maybe pushing the envelope a little bit more to over 8.5. Now, at same with you, I don't expect them to win this division. Even in a scenario where they cover that 8.5, I think they only are going to finish with 9 wins, still falling a couple games short of keeping up with the likes of San Francisco or even potentially the Rams, depending on how the season plays out. As we saw last year, there was a lot of parity throughout the division. Um, so I definitely think it's possible for a team like the Cardinals, if they're able to figure things out, that number, the books might be regretting that number when we're talking about, things at the end of the season. And why was that number at 6.5?
Yeah. Yeah. Just you take a risk sometimes, and I think it's definitely a risky team because of the young, unproven talent. But I'm willing to take that risk. I'm willing to put my money on down and say, why not? Why not take a chance? I think they do have a good chance to kind of be that sort of team because I mean, there's always teams in each conference that surprise you, and maybe this is one of them. One you don't at least the sports books don't expect to do much, but then they prove it wrong, and they rack up some wins there, and hey, I mean, it's gonna pay off. So I definitely willing to take that chance.
And I'm absolutely right there with you. I don't think there's too many teams out there that we'd be having this conversation about that. Basically last place team in the divisions season before, and you know, we saw a lot of fight out of the Cardinals last season. There were a lot of games where even though they found themselves on the losing side, it was still a game that left you potentially excited for what they could do in other situations. I know from a betting standpoint, it definitely at least gave the possibility that you might look more at something like a spread, um, taking them plus whatever the points were, because there were, I don't know if they were necessarily 3-4 point victory losses, but a lot of scenarios where the Cardinals had a chance to win those games and just weren't able to hold on.
All right, that'll wrap up our episode on the NFC West. Um, but yeah, we'll be doing the NFC North next week. So be sure to tune in for that. But as far as now, you can tell everybody where they can find you, DWeezy.
Yes, the people can find me at Backyard Action Media here on YouTube and at the Yard Bets on Twitter.
All right, you can find me at NFL Caleb 22 on Instagram and X/Twitter. And you can find me on this channel doing Good Friends, Better Rivals on Friday at 3 o'clock with my co-host Ferris Muthana. We'll be talking Cowboys, talking Giants, going over the Cowboys game against the Rams, and probably previewing what's going to happen in week 2 of the preseason. So tune in for that.
Got any thoughts on Trey Lance yet? Is he going to replace Dak?
He's horrible. Well, just to preview what I'm going to say on Friday. Yeah, it's not going to be good things to say about Trey Lance. Not very good things at all.
Man, since we happen to be talking about the NFC West, this was a question I posed a couple of years ago. It may have been a Twitter space or something like that, and the people tried to laugh me out of the room. But where is the blowback from the 49ers drafting, trading picks to move up to draft Trey Lance? And what did they get in return? I mean, you want to talk about some bad trades out there. I'm willing to, hey, my Panthers.
Well, I feel like we made a bad trade trading a 4th-round pick for him.
Yeah, but, once you start talking about day 2 picks and things of that nature, I think value might get a little bit more in the eye of the beholder. But
we could have had a guy that actually contributed instead of what we have now.
Well, that's also a side effect of having Jerry Jones as an owner. I mean, be happy it wasn't a day 1 pick. I mean, come on.
Yeah. But yeah, tune in for that. Tune in for Friday for more in depth what I'm going to say about what he did on what he did today. But as far as now, get your bets in while you can, and like we always say, bet safely. Only can bet what you can afford to lose, and like always, let's get ready to make that money.